proclaimed martial law in accordance with the powers vested in the President by the Constitution of the Philippines.
When President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law in September of 1972, it was to suppress the increasing civil strife and threats of a communist takeover following a series of terrorist activities, such as bombings and assassination attempts. By declaring martial law, it thereby suspended the 1935 Constitution, dissolving Congress and assuming absolute power. The declaration also curtailed press freedom and other civil liberties and ordered for the arrest of opposition leaders and militant activists. The arrests and detention of these activists were deemed questionable as they were placed in indefinite detention in military camps. What was even more disturbing is that many of the detained were never seen or heard from again. Because of martial law, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus was suspended and therefore was not used to question the legality or validity of the arrests and detention of students and activists. Under present scenarios, the writ of habeas corpus has been used due to dubious arrests and detention made by rogue members of authorities. One such example can be used in the situation a businessman and his colleagues found themselves in when police officers allegedly halted the vehicles they were in along EDSA. These policemen allegedly robbed the said group and detained them for 7 hours at the La Loma police station. In situations similar to this, the questions now are, what is habeas corpus? How can it be used outside of the context of martial law? In what everyday situation can habeas corpus be applicable?
Good evening. You are watching Legal Help Desk on 9TV. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight, we will discuss your legal rights on habeas corpus, what you need to know about habeas corpus, and how you can apply it to your everyday situation. We'll also tackle the topic on warrantless arrests.
Our guest for tonight is attorney J.V. Bautista, former party list representative, and of course, a very good lawyer.
Very good lawyer. And thank you very much, sir. A renowned personality when it comes to the writ of habeas corpus.
Yes. Good evening, Rod. Good evening, Karen.
Right.
I'm very glad to be here and join you for this episode on this very important topic.
Yeah, because in a way, it's 42 years since martial law was imposed by then President Marcos. And well, as we know, people hear this. Almost everyone who takes up a political science subject would have taken up habeas corpus, no? Which I think literally means show me the body, right?
Well,
but I think siguro attorney JV can make it more parang easily understandable because it sounds so highfalutin when you say habeas corpus.
Because it's Latin.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what does it mean?
Well, literally it means you may have the body.
You may have the body.
You may have the body because it's an old English concept where a court order, which they call a writ, is issued to find or to produce a certain person who is supposed to be under custody. So now we have adopted this concept. It is in our Constitution. Everybody enjoys the privilege of the writ. Okay. So when you talk of suspension, this is what I learned early in my law school days. It is not the writ of habeas corpus that is suspended. It is the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus that is suspended. Now, habeas corpus, the writ of habeas corpus, is a privilege which gives anybody the right, or rather the remedy, to ask a court for the production of the person, the body of a person who is detained. He can be detained by police officers, by law enforcement agencies, or he may be detained by a private institution. Like, for example, a mental institution.
Can it be a private person?
It can be also a private person.
So I think that's why, for the benefit of our viewers, this is not just a political topic or something that only applies to criminal cases? Because
Yes.
even in family cases, pag kunwari, you have a child and you're
Yes.
fighting over the custody and it's with the other parent or the grandparent and ayaw isole, then this is something you can use
That is
to
correct.
demand
That
their
is correct.
custody.
Although, Karen, the use of habeas corpus recently in custody cases is really of fairly
New,
fairly
new,
New
vintage.
development.
Yeah, in the past, when you speak of habeas corpus, especially in the martial law days, it was really about looking into the detention of disappeared people, disappeared students, student leaders, for example, labor union leaders, who may have been arrested.
So there was a political side or aspect to it.
Yes, because habeas corpus is really the great writ of liberty. It really pertains to the liberty of a person. But the application nowadays has expanded to include even those who are, for example, questioning their being in a mental institution, for example, because sometimes somebody can be brought by a relative to a mental institution, and he can ask through any representative to be
Freed from that.
to be freed,
Yeah,
to
from
be
that
liberated
Using
from that.
What about
using that
being in a
privilege.
rehabilitation institution? You know,
Same.
sometimes
Yes.
sabihin nila, they accuse you you're a drug addict, you're an alcoholic,
Correct.
even if it's not true. So,
Correct.
obviously, if you're already in the hands of that rehabilitation center, you can't just leave. They will really stop you from
Yes.
leaving. So this is something that you can ask someone to file on your behalf.
That's correct.
So-
The question that the court will inquire into is the validity or the legal basis of the detention. So if the court can look into will look into that, it issues the writ. The court issues the writ. When a petition is filed, the petition, by the way, can be filed by anybody. This is in contrast to, for example, a civil suit, an ordinary civil suit, where the plaintiff
has to be the agreed
has
party.
to be a party in interest,
Party in
a
interest.
real party in interest.
So this
But
one-
in habeas corpus, practically
No
anybody
one.
can file it. Anybody can file it. And the court will issue the writ commanding the one who has custody or who is detaining the person to produce the body, because he may have the body. So that the court will now look or inquire into the validity of that detention
Now,
or
who,
that custody.
who serves the writ? So basically, the court serves the writ to the person who's detaining that person.
Yes, the writ is served by the sheriff or the
Sheriff,
process server of the court to the address to the respondent. The respondent must be named in the petition. If the respondent, for example, is a police officer, then that police officer must be named.
Okay, Attorney JV, now that you've mentioned police officers, just recently, there was this incident in broad
Yes.
daylight in EDSA where some people were abducted by rogue police officers. So in that case, the abduction was apparently illegal. What would you file to get the custody of those people back? Na yung mga inabduct nila, are you going to file a criminal case for kidnapping, or is the writ of habeas corpus the more proper legal process to follow in that case?
Well, it really depends on the set of facts, Karen. You'll have to analyze them and evaluate them very carefully. In this particular situation, what I see are facts that constitute a criminal act committed by these policemen.
Okay.
Because, first of all, it does not appear to be a lawful arrest. It was not even a lawful warrantless arrest.
It's
It was not even in the context of law enforcement. So
It was not.
basically,
Parang
they
it
were
was
just
more-
committing a
it was
crime.
not.
in the popular term, hulid up. Parang hulid up.
Kaya
It was
Hulida.
hulid up. And
Yeah.
hulid up is actually robbery extortion. That is how it is.
And it's aggravated if the
Yeah,
real policeman there. It's an aggravated.
Of course. And in this case,
element.
only policemen can actually commit
Commit a
this
crime.
hulid up.
Yes,
Because
yes.
they're the only ones authorized by law to effect arrest.
So in that scenario, as asked by Karen, is it better for you to be able to secure the freedom of those who were abducted? Would it be better to file for that writ, or should you just file for an immediate, let's say, apply for or file a case for serious illegal detention, for example?
Well, in this case, the police are claiming that they arrested these people because I understand that they were claiming that there was drugs involved. That there was drugs involved. So, be that as it may, police officers who undertake or effect a lawful arrest must, under Article 125 of the Revised Penal Code, release the person arrested within certain period of time. Depending on the gravity of the offense, it will be 12 hours, 18 hours, or 36 hours for the most serious offense. And failing that, they can be charged with failure to deliver in the delivery of detained persons to judicial authority.
And that's a serious crime, a serious offense, right?
It's an offense,
It's a
yes.
criminal
it's an
offense.
But
And
that
even-
assumes that the arrest was lawful. But
Which
in this
means-
case, there is no indication that the arrest
which means
was lawful.
that one, they should have had a warrant of arrest, or second,
Or-
kung walang warrant of arrest, it should have been
A valid warrantless arrest.
or yes, exactly. They
A
should have-
warrantless arrest.
A valid warrantless
Yeah,
arrest.
and a warrantless arrest
meaning
to be lawful.
you caught them
Yes.
committing the crime, or
There is a
yung
crime being
plain view.
committed. A crime has just been committed. A crime is about to be committed. Or that a crime has been committed and the arresting officer has personal knowledge of the commission of the crime so that he can effect the warrantless arrest. And the third situation, of course, is for felons who have
Escaped.
convicted felons who have escaped. They can be arrested even without a
So
warrant.
those are the situations where you can have a warrantless arrest.
A legal, lawful warrantless arrest.
Right.
Absent that, you need a warrant.
You need the warrant. Okay.
And without a warrant, and in a situation where it does not justify a warrantless arrest, then the arrest is illegal.
Okay.
Okay, we'll
All right.
delve into that more, but it's really interesting that Attorney JV is shedding light into this issue.
Yes.
Marami kasing may alam, but hindi nila talaga naiintindihan.
Yeah. Feeling kasi nila habeas corpus, habeas corpus
Or
is
just
only
because,
for martial
police
law.
officers
Yeah.
yung involved, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll discuss this more and other
Alright.
topics related to the writ of habeas corpus, but for now we'll have to take a short break. Legal Help Desk will return, so stay tuned. You're still watching Legal Help Desk on 9TV with our guest, Attorney JV Bautista.
All right. So we
Let's
were
move
discussing
on to
earlier.
that.
Yeah.
Yes,
There are
because
topics. Yun nga, initially, for most people, habeas corpus is equivalent to martial law. Yun yung,
Yes.
di ba? Yun yung
Yes.
association. But now, as for those who just tuned in, we've been discussing that it's not necessarily related to
But
purely
I'll
martial
tell
law.
you why, Rod. Why it's
Okay.
really related. Because the provision of the Constitution on the suspension of the privilege of the writ falls in the article on the commander-in-chief powers of the president. That is why it's really,
Alright. So that's
it's
the reason
really,
why.
yes, that is why it's really connected.
There's this association.
martial law.
Yes, and remember that when the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus is suspended by the president within a period of 60 days, the only ground it can be suspended is when there is rebellion or invasion and that the public safety requires it.
So
Now,
very exceptional
yes,
circumstances.
exceptional. And the deprivation of the privilege of the writ during its suspension only applies to those who are accused either of rebellion or any of the crimes which are inherent to invasion. For example, treason or espionage or communication with the
In other words,
with an enemy country.
you're trying to topple the government.
Yes,
Ganun type.
yes,
Oh.
yes. So that is why habeas corpus is really somehow connected to a political color. It goes hand in hand also with the power of the president to suspend or rather to declare martial law.
Okay.
Attorney JV, let's go back to current affairs.
Okay.
So if, for instance, yung mga incident involving rogue policemen or it's really police officers who abduct you or detain you, what would be your advice then on the proper legal recourse?
Well, in this case, the victims are doing the right thing. They're going to the authorities. In this case, of course, the Department of Justice or the prosecutors to undertake the proper preliminary investigation because definitely criminal acts were committed here. If you ask me, this is not a situation where you would contemplate the filing of a writ of habeas corpus. Because, well, one, the abduction committed by the police officers was a case of illegal arrest. If in fact it was an arrest, of course the police officers will say it was an arrest,
but
because
it
they
was
were
in
in the performance of duty.
It was in the course of their duty.
Yes, it was in the performance of duty, and therefore from their allegation they were effecting an arrest. But again, how can they legally arrest these victims when, number one, there was no warrant, and number two, these guys were not committing any offense. We're not in the act of committing any criminal offense, nor was there any criminal offense committed that will give them a personal or rather probable cause to effect an arrest. And number two, they detained these persons without any lawful basis, which is again a violation of the revised penal code provision on arbitrary detention.
Well, a few months back, the same allegation of serious illegal detention was filed by actor Vong Navarro.
Yes.
Because he was saying that also policemen were involved in basically holding him for how long was that? Was
Well,
it only a couple
of hours, but he was claiming serious illegal detention.
So is
that was the claim. And that's the reason why the non-bailable offense.
You know what?
So
this offense of serious illegal detention is now being used in order to ensure that the respondent who becomes an accused will be deprived of bail. Oh, this is what happened in the case of who's this PIDAF?
Janet Lim Napoles. Ben Harlow.
Janet Napoles. Yes, Janet Lim Napoles. You know, people thought in the beginning that she was arrested already because of the pork barrel scam. But very few understood that the reason why she was in jail in the beginning was because of an information for serious illegal detention that was filed in connection with her alleged detention of Ben-Hur Luy.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, in this case of the so-called Bong Navarro serious illegal detention, what's the name of this fellow?
Cedric Lee.
Cedric Lee. I think that it's really a tough thing to prove that such was a case of serious illegal detention. First of all, well, I don't want to discuss the case because it's sub judice.
Yes, of course.
But I think that the court has already made today a determination that the evidence of guilt for serious illegal detention is not strong, and therefore enabling Cedric Lee to post bail, bail being a constitutional right, except in cases where the penalty is.
But in that case, you have the police who supposedly arrested Vong Navarro and held him in custody. So if you were, for instance, a relative of someone in the same situation, and you're questioning that, no, your arrest was not legal because the person who was complaining made up basically a story that was not true, what should you file? Should you file a case for getting a writ of habeas corpus?
Yes. If the detention is illegal, because the arrest was illegal and the detention is illegal, then the proper remedy is the filing of a petition for a writ of habeas corpus. But see, Karen and Rod, here's the problem. We have jurisprudence that states that the moment a criminal information is filed against the suspect, which now becomes an accused because of the filing of the criminal information, then the detention becomes legal.
So you
now,
cannot
there was already information.
Yes.
Yes.
In this case, you cannot use.
You can no
the writ
longer
of
use
habeas corpus.
the remedy of filing a petition for it. In that case, the remedy that can be utilized is a petition for bail.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Yes.
If the offense is non-bailable. But if the offense, and most offenses are bailable in any way, I mean, the greater majority of offenses are bailable. The moment the information is filed, then the accused can post bail because that's a constitutional right.
So the key here is the filing of the case, right? For example, if you're being detained, you have to have, or someone has to file a charge against you.
Yes.
And if there's no charge, you have to be released.
You have to be released.
Okay, that's
because
the point.
If
right.
you are not released, then the peace officers, the police officers who are detaining you will be liable for a criminal offense of failure to deliver custody of prisoners to the judicial authorities.
And there are time periods, right?
Yes.
From the time you hold custody of someone.
That's
Meron
correct. 12,
deadline,
18,
yes.
36
Depends on
hours.
the- Depends on the crime.
12
Depending
hours
on
is
the
for what
gravity of
type of
defense.
offenses?
Huh?
12 hours is for what type of offenses?
Only light offenses. Only light offenses.
So kunwari nahuli kang shoplifting and then usually this happens yung mga nahuhuling shoplifting, they are arrested and then placed in custody while waiting for, of course, yung ma-file ng kaso.
Well, depende, Karen, what you shoplifted.
Okay, it's based on the amount as well.
In theft, it's based on the amount of
so
the
kunwari, it's a
property that was taken.
small item.
If it's a small item, then, you know,
you have the police officers that arrested you have about 12 hours to make sure that they filed the criminal complaint or else they have to release
This
you.
is a situation of a warrantless arrest. So the police can take the offender even without a warrant. And then, within 12 hours, the offender must be brought to an inquest fiscal. Because the inquest fiscal will be the one to prepare the information. If he finds probable cause, normally they do. Because there was an in flagrante delicto situation.
Meaning caught in the act.
Meaning caught in the act. So that it is filed with the court within the 12 hours, and that person can post bail. Because light offenses are all bailable.
Okay, so basta yun yung mga deadline. 12 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours.
18 hours.
18 hours.
And 36
12,
hours.
All right, we have some, Attorney JV, we have some questions from our viewers. Zelda sent us this question. My husband was forced by his siblings to go to rehab. We were discussing this earlier.
Yes.
He's not a user, but somehow he tested positive for drugs. There was no court order for this, and he has been there for 2 months. His siblings want him to stay there indefinitely, but he wants to leave. No? So
Yes.
since we have a 2-year-old daughter, how can I get him out?
That is a classic case where you can use the remedy of a petition for a writ of habeas corpus.
And who do you name in the complaint as the respondent?
Well,
Is
the
it
rehabilitation center.
The not the siblings. Kasi in this case,
Not the siblings.
he's kept at the rehabilitation
Yes.
center, but apparently parang based on the question, it's the siblings who want to
Siblings
keep
were
the
forced,
ginagawang kulungan yung rehab center.
Yeah, the rehabilitation
Yes.
center is the institution which has custody. And therefore, they are in a position to produce the body. So when anybody is asked, you may have the body, they are the ones to whom
They can-
this
The order.
writ must
The
be
order
They
addressed.
is-
can't,
going
they
to
can't
address.
say, well, the siblings were the ones who were asking us to detain him.
They'll have to first bring
Bring the...
the person who is under rehab to court, so that the court will satisfy itself that the person is there.
And if they don't do that, knowing that it's the body's there or the person is there, and they don't do it, what is their penalty?
It will be they will be amenable for a contempt penalty from the court.
Okay.
For as long as they do not comply, the court can issue contempt order and get their officers or anyone who is holding custody of the person and get them arrested for contempt.
All right.
We have another question from Edith. Can I use habeas corpus to force my ex-boyfriend's mother to return my child to me? It's been 6 months since she borrowed my 4-year-old son from me. Ba, hiniram lang?
Yes.
Parang laruan lang na hiniram. Tapos ngayon ayaw na
Parang
isali.
Raggedy Ann dog.
Yeah.
This is
Another classic case?
classic situation where you can use habeas corpus. I will advise, what's the name of the
Edith.
caller?
Edith.
You can go to a lawyer, have the lawyer prepare a petition for habeas corpus, file it with the family court, and you have to name the mother-in-law. Is it the mother-in-law?
Mother-in-law.
Yes,
Mother-in-law.
technically,
Well,
because it's the mother of
the
her
ex-boyfriend.
ex-boyfriend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mother of the ex-boyfriend will now be the respondent in the habeas corpus case. She will be petitioner, and the subject matter is the child. And the respondent will be the mother of the ex-boyfriend. She will now be forced, because of the issuance of the writ, to produce the child before the court. And the court will determine, if the child is less than 9 years old, she cannot be separated from the mother.
Yes.
So that the court will immediately find a ground for the return of the child to Edith. So Edith, you have a very good case here.
Thank you.
All right.
Very helpful information for Edith. I hope that helps. We still have a lot to discuss with our guests. Legal Help Desk will return after these messages. You're still watching Legal Help Desk on 9TV with our guest, Attorney J.V. Bautista.
Yeah. So we were talking about habeas corpus in relation to mga civil cases also, no? And but now let's talk about, kasi this is also very related to arrest warrants and the issuance of warrants, obviously. So let's discuss that, no?
Yes.
And for example, I am being arrested. Bigla na lang, I'm driving, I'm being arrested.
Yes.
What can I, as an ordinary citizen, say to the police officers? Can I say, oh, where's your warrant?
Yes, yes. Okay, the first thing that needs to be remembered by everybody is this. The general rule is that no arrest can be effected without a warrant.
So, yan yung general rule.
Yes,
Right.
so that if any peace officer or any policeman wants to arrest you, the first thing you ask, where is your warrant of arrest? If he can show a warrant of arrest, then well, of course, you have to be discerning. You also need to scrutinize the
warrant of
warrant.
arrest
Sometimes there are
Yeah.
fake warrants of arrest.
Yeah. But this is very helpful information because a lot of people, lalo na yung mga walang alam usually sa rules of procedure, they're very intimidated. Basta naka-uniform,
May baril, syempre.
kala nila pwede silang arestuhin.
Oh, yes, yes,
So,
yes. Now, there are only instances, Karen. when-
give us the exceptions.
Yes, the exception to an arrest without a warrant is the so-called warrantless arrest. Now, in warrantless arrest, there are only 3 conditions. Number 1, that a crime is being committed. In short, you're
Huli
committing
ka.
a crime.
Yes, huli ka sa akto.
Huli ka sa akto. We lawyers call it in flagrante. Di ba? O huli ka sa akto, of course, you don't need a warrant for that. Or, if the peace officer or the policeman has probable cause to believe that you're committing a crime. For example, you're acting suspiciously. And then the policeman first of all, if the policeman has an information, let us say that there is going to be somebody who will deliver drugs, and then you happen to be in that place, and you're acting suspiciously, the policeman can actually search you. And if the search is positive, then there can be a warrantless arrest. Because the arrest was an incident of a lawful search and seizure.
Yes.
Oh, lawful search and seizure. Now, the third one is if the person to be arrested without a warrant is a felon who escaped from prison, a convicted felon who escapes from prison. You don't need a warrant for that. So, in a situation where there is a warrantless arrest, of course, the first thing you ask the police officer is, what have I done? Normally, this happens in traffic situations.
Correct. I was going to ask that. Traffic situation.
Yung mga traffic.
Can I be arrested? Kunyari, I beat the red light. I got caught. Oh, nag-beat ka ng red light. Sir, hindi. Yellow pa. Kunyari, I can argue. Hindi.
But you can be,
Presinto
you can be arrested for traffic violations because in traffic violations, all you need to do is to receive a citation ticket. And in this jurisdiction, well, sadly, in our situation, the traffic enforcers or the police officers will confiscate our driver's license. Because in other jurisdictions, they don't do that. They just issue the citation
we need
ticket.
that for another episode kasi hindi naman in all instances pwedeng i-confiscate yung driver's license.
As a matter of fact, I think that confiscation of a driver's license is beyond the authority of a traffic officer or a policeman. But as you said, that calls for another
They usually
episode.
intimidate yung mga drivers.
So basically,
I'm sure a lot of your viewers would be interested in listening to a discussion.
But so let's make it clear. If I get caught in a traffic violation,
Hindi
I
ka
cannot
dapat
be
pwede
arrested.
ma-arresto.
You cannot be arrested.
I can refuse. I can refuse.
Because a traffic violation, unless it results into a homicide, for example,
Meaning
due
kunwari,
to reckless
nakasagasa
negligence,
ka, yes.
nakasagasa ka, di ba? You'll have to be arrested.
Yes.
But if
it's just beating a red light.
beating a red light or entering a one-way street, you cannot be arrested.
Beating a red light, and then pag open sa'yo ng door, but you reek of alcohol.
Ah, well, then that's a different story.
Can you be
Especially
arrested?
now because we have,
That's a different story.
remember we have a law on
There's a
anti-drunk
special law.
and drug
Oo.
driving act. So
Correct.
Yeah, that one you can be
if you
arrested.
test positive, di ba, and then you refuse
I
to
understand
be
that under
tested.
the special law that was recently passed, Karen and Rod, there are certain tests.
Yes.
Yung mga napapanood natin sa
Yeah.
TV, di ba?
Yes.
Oo, na they'll ask you to walk this way.
Yeah.
Oh, yung mga ganun.
That one you can
ganun,
be arrested and you can't question it.
because of a special law.
Yeah, alright.
Not because of the traffic violation.
Yes,
And hindi ka
exactly.
pwedeng mag-apply for a writ doon. Writ,
Well, the arrest was lawful. So therefore,
Ang
your
remedy mo na
detention
would be
will be
bail.
left lawful.
Yes.
Oo.
Oo.
Remember that a petition for a writ of habeas corpus presupposes that the detention has no legal basis.
Okay.
It is unlawful.
Okay. And whether it's police or whether it's a private person?
Yes.
Who detained you? Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'll say, we still have a couple of questions from our viewers. Renzo sent us this question. Can I resist arrest if I know that I didn't do anything wrong or if I'm being arrested against my will? What are the valid reasons or instances for a person to be arrested without a warrant?
Okay, yung kanina na
we were discussing
pinag-uusapan
that.
natin, yung
Well,
mga warrantless arrest.
Of course, we already discussed the warrantless
Warrantless
arrest, the
arrest.
situation. In this instance, he is thinking of resisting arrest. But that could lead to another offense.
Yes, yeah.
If he happens to hit, for example, if the arresting officer is a policeman, then he is an agent of a person in authority. And that will constitute assault, direct assault, which is another offense, which is another criminal offense. So the better thing to do would, of course, be to try to first clarify with the arresting officer what he is being arrested for. Siyempre, nakikipag-usap lang naman yan di ba? Titanungin mo, why am I being arrested? And if you're being arrested for a crime, then you're entitled to a lawyer. Then you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to be read your Miranda rights by the police officer if you're being arrested. So,
Kung sinabi ng officer, basta sumama ka lang sa amin.
hindi pwede. Oo. I think this is where your program has a very useful value to our ordinary citizens. Kasi I'm really inviting your viewers as well as their relatives and their friends to watch this program because they're going to learn a lot of things about their rights in this program.
Kasi minsan officers do that, di ba? Basta sumama ka lang sa amin.
Hindi pwede yun.
Oo.
Pwede yun.
Yeah.
Hindi pwede yun.
Oo.
Tell the
And then,
viewers.
but Renzo, kung merong valid warrant of arrest, you cannot resist it, even if you're very convinced na wala kang ginawang kasalanan. So what you can do is prove in court where the complaint is filed na there is no reason for your arrest or that you did not commit the offense.
Yes.
Okay, we have
Very good.
another
Very
question
good.
from
Okay.
Loida. My nephew was unlawfully arrested because of a mistaken identity. He has the same name as the person the authorities were looking for, but they didn't present any warrant when they forcefully entered their house. Since then, he is suffering from trauma. What can I file against the authorities who did this to him?
Civil damages. They can file a civil complaint for civil damages so that, first of all, they will have to prove that the victim, in this case, I think the nephew, has really suffered all of these things and that they are spending for, let's say, medication and medical expenses for the nephew. So they can sue the officers for civil damages. They can go to the Commission on Human Rights. They can go to the Internal Affairs Service of the Philippine National Police or the NAPOLCOM to file an administrative case against the police.
Okay.
If there was a breach of the duties, the regular duties of the police.
And in this case, because the warrant apparently, the aunt was saying na may
Mistaken
mistaken
identity.
identity. So, obviously, we're saying that kung merong warrant of arrest and there was a complaint filed, then you cannot use the writ of habeas corpus. But if it's a mistaken identity, can you use the writ of habeas?
Yes. In this case, in this particular situation, I think the writ of habeas corpus can be utilized if the arrested nephew was still in detention. But I understand from
Yes,
the
kung
question,
yung nakalabas na.
oo. So, he's asking for remedies, no? Because my impression is that they were trying to explain to the police officers that this is case of mistaken identity. Most likely, the victim here is probably from a low-income family. And that is why the police can really abuse their authority. And I think this is what happened here. There was an abuse of authority by the police, and they did not mind. You know, they did not take a second look at the correctness of the identity of the person they were arresting. Because, you know, that will not happen if, for example, the warrant is being served in a Forbes Park residence, for example.
Right.
So, in this situation, I think the poor victim here really should avail of remedies to try to, compensate himself.
All right.
Thank you, Attorney JV. Sayang kulang pa sa time. But you know,
we need 2 hours
just
here.
for the benefit of everyone watching us, see, Attorney JV is really an authority, not only because he's a good lawyer, but he went through the experience of being illegally detained and having to resort to a writ of habeas corpus in order to
You're living proof.
to get his freedom back during martial law.
Actually, I was 23 years old at the time. I was not yet a lawyer. I had just taken the bar when I was arrested and imprisoned together with the late Lian Alejandro in Fort Bonifacio. That was then a military, you know, the Bonifacio Global City was then a military camp. That was where we were detained. And my family had to go to the Supreme Court. At that time, during the period of martial law, habeas corpus petitions were all filed with the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, in fairness to them, at that time, will entertain all petitions for habeas corpus because they know that that is politically motivated.
Were you granted the privilege?
Well,
He's here now.
Well,
no. This
when
is
were
what
you
happened.
released?
Actually, this is what happened. The court, that was still under martial law, so the court still intimidated. Even the Supreme Court was intimidated by the Marcos government. So, the court had no occasion to rule on our petition. Before it was able to rule, a certain U.S. politician by the name of Senator John Kerry visited the Philippines.
Okay.
And he had a meeting with President Marcos. Before he had the meeting with President Marcos, he went to Cory Aquino, the widow of who was then a widow of Ninoy, because we were detained in 1985. And Senator Kerry asked Cory Aquino, is there anything you want me to take up with the president? Because I'm going to see him tomorrow. And Cory Aquino, among other things, suggested to him that perhaps you can bring up the case of these 2 student leaders who are detained.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's the reason why we were released before the Supreme Court was able to act on our
Okay,
petition.
beautiful story. Dapat pala,
I'll write about it when I grow a little
Please
older.
let us know when the book is out.
And now Secretary of State.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Nakakatuwa naman.
That was interesting.
Sorry, but thank you again, Attorney JV.
My pleasure.
And very good,
Hope we
very
can
good
guest you
helping
again.
us
Sure,
answer
sure.
questions.
Call anytime.
And thank you for that
Thank
beautiful
you.
story. We'll have to take another short break. Legal Help Desk will be back, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Legal Help Desk on 9TV.
Wow, what a fantastic show, huh?
Yes,
That
we
was
had a
great.
very knowledgeable guest who had an interesting story about himself being illegally detained and having to use the writ of habeas corpus just to get his freedom back.
Alright,
And
so-
very interestingly, ang involved pala for his freedom would be former President Cory Aquino, who was then new widow of Ninoy Aquino, and then
Senator
John
Kerry,
Kerry helped in his
And
release.
now the Secretary of State, diba? So
Yes.
we learned a lot today. I think our televiewers learned a lot. To our televiewers, we also learned a lot today. No? Obviously, Attorney JV learned a lot also while he was detained. No?
Yes,
So,
and just to
regarding-
clarify, the writ of habeas corpus, it's not just this political concept or very highfalutin word na does not apply to ordinary citizens. Actually, it's very relevant because one, we're celebrating the anniversary of martial law, but apart from being illegally detained because of, for instance, a martial law case scenario, you can use the writ of habeas corpus for all types of illegal detention. Meaning, for instance, kung merong mga police officers na hindi ka naman na-file ng criminal complaint and illegal yung arrest mo. This is something that you or your relatives or family members can file in order to secure your release. Or for instance, if you have a child and your partner, the other parent, or your ex-partner, ex-boyfriend is illegally withholding the custody of the child or hiding the child from you, you can file a case to get a writ of habeas corpus so that you can get the custody of the child back.
And relative to that, if a police officer arrests you and he doesn't have a warrant, well, the first thing you have to do, if you're being arrested, you ask, where is your warrant? All right. Now, if the police officer or the police authority can't produce a warrant, you have to ask, why am I being arrested? If he or she says, "Hindi, basta sumama ka lang sa akin," you can resist arrest. Now, you have to kind of play it by ear. Kasi obviously, if he's wielding a gun, you kind of have to be practical also. All right? But in reality, legally speaking, you can say, no, I'm refusing and resisting arrest because you don't have any warrant or you don't have any reason why you're arresting me. So dapat when you're being arrested and being asked to go to, let's say, a police precinct, there has to be a reason.
But an exception would be if you were caught committing an offense or if in connection with a valid search and seizure, may mga nahuling illegitimate sa inyo, katulad ng illegal drugs, for instance, or illegal firearms, meaning yung mga guns na wala kayong license for. And then lastly, if a complaint, a criminal complaint has already been filed against you or the person that has been detained, then you can no longer get a writ of habeas corpus because obviously at this point, meron ng legal basis for the detention. So what you can do is file a petition for bail, assuming that the offense is bailable.
Correct. So again, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus is only available for those who are detained for no legal reason. No? So as Karen said, Attorney Karen said, dapat if once a case has been filed or information has been filed, you can't avail of this privilege. All right. Now, over the week, we have received some comments from our viewers. Richmond left this comment on our Twitter page. Last week was my first time to watch your show, and I'm stoked. We'll definitely watch it religiously. Kudos. All right. Thank you so much.
What a cute expression of stoked.
Yeah.
And Twitter
Kudos.
user BJY Geronimo tweeted, "Watching the show is an automatic bar reviewer every Monday. I wish the show was at least 2 hours long."
Yeah, so we can be bar
sweet.
reviewers now.
And good luck to with your bar exam, which is coming up in October.
Yeah, quite near. So good luck to all the people who are taking the bar. And lastly, Elmer posted on our Facebook page, "Your show is so informative. I am hooked." Thank you.
Nakakatuwa naman.
Yeah.
Mukhang maraming na-addict, no? Stoked, hooked.
Ang dadaming mga lawyers, no? All right. That's all the time that we have for tonight. We would like to thank all of our viewers who have sent us their legal questions and comments on our social media pages. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. If you have any questions or comments on our topic for tonight, you may post these at our Facebook and Twitter pages. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights. Good night.
Members of authorities. One such example can be used in the situation a businessman and his colleagues found themselves in when police officers allegedly halted the vehicles they were in along EDSA. These policemen allegedly robbed the said group and detained them for 7 hours at the La Loma police station. In situations similar to this, the questions now are, what is habeas corpus? How can it be used outside of the context of martial law? In what everyday situation can habeas corpus be applicable?
Good evening. You are watching Legal Help Desk on 9TV. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight, we will discuss your legal rights on Habeas Corpus. What you need to begin.
Well, literally it means you may have the body.
You may have the body.
You may have the body because it's an old English concept where a court order, which they call a writ, is issued to find or to produce a certain person who is supposed to be under custody. So now we have adopted this concept. It is in our constitution. Everybody enjoys the privilege of the writ.
Okay.
So when you talk of suspension, this is what I learned early in my law school days. It is not the writ of habeas corpus that is suspended. It is the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus that is suspended. Now, habeas corpus, the writ of habeas corpus, is a privilege which gives anybody the right, or rather the remedy, to ask
to know about habeas corpus and how you can apply it to your everyday situation. We'll also tackle the topic on warrantless arrests.
Our guest for tonight is Attorney J.V. Bautista, former party list representative, and of course, a very good lawyer.
Very good lawyer. And thank you very much, sir. A renowned personality when it comes to the writ of habeas corpus.
Yes. Good evening, Rod. Good evening, Karen.
All right.
I'm very glad to be here and join you for this episode on this very important topic.
Yeah, because in a way, it's 42 years since martial law was imposed by then President Marcos. And well, as we know, people hear this. Almost everyone who takes up a political science subject would have taken up habeas corpus, no? Which I think literally means show me the body, right?
Well,
but I think siguro Attorney JV can make it more parang easily understandable. Because it sounds so highfalutin when you say habeas corpus.
Because it's Latin.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what does it mean?
I have proclaimed martial law in accordance with the powers vested in the President by the Constitution of the Philippines.
When President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law in September of 1972, it was to suppress the increasing civil strife and threats of a communist takeover following a series of terrorist activities, such as bombings and assassination attempts. By declaring martial law, it thereby suspended the 1935 Constitution, dissolving Congress and assuming absolute power. The declaration also curtailed press freedom and other civil liberties and ordered for the arrest of opposition leaders and militant activists. The arrests and detention of these activists were deemed questionable as they were placed in indefinite detention in military camps. What was even more disturbing is that many of the detained were never seen or heard from again. Because of martial law, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus was suspended and therefore was not used to question the legality or validity of the arrests and detention of students and activists. Under present scenarios, the writ of habeas corpus has been used due to dubious arrests and detention made by rogue